Hey, what's up, guys? Hope everyone had a good week. Just a quick update on everything. I know it's like I said, it's been boring. Hopefully, you guys are kind of well aware of that now. That and should expect that with these positions, but just a lot of higher time frame closes that I'm really watching. Crowd was a little bit concerning, I would say, here on Thursday when the broader market just sold off. But overall, still pretty healthy of a chart, right? I mean, it had that break over that high, basically 3 weeks of a pullback to retest that high. Long wicks on the first 2 weeks, obviously, with the candle closure still being over the top of that level, which is very key. So really just managing this on a weekly slash daily time frame, as long as things aren't too concerning in terms of volume and it really creating distance or separation well underneath 299 or that 300 level. Not too concerned with this. Still holding the uptrend, still closing well above 299.85. So that was pretty much that. Just kind of watching this on those higher time frames. Haven't been doing much else besides that. Maybe I should add into this one if I'm being honest. We'll see how this ends up opening next week. But I've talked a lot about this, guys. It's not so much just price, right? And kind of how these things are holding around levels, because we got to know these levels can fail during this little period of weakness. We have one more week going into probably the biggest week I would argue ever that I've been trading. I mean, I've traded a little bit during, I shouldn't say a little bit, quite a bit during COVID. But I think this is going to be either really volatile or it's not going to be anything, right? And we're going to see either deleveraging or a big rip because it's a nothing burger. Really can't say exactly what it's going to be, but a lot of unpredictability, a lot of uncertainty built around this election period, as well as FOMC that same exact week. So it's fireworks, in my opinion, in terms of what could happen. But that's the reason I'm not adding, is because we have those two major catalysts during the final week of essentially no flows that can support market, right? So I don't want to be adding into a non-supportive week in case this ends up kind of falling below, right, a little bit, and it looks a little sketchy and I'm just adding into a knife. I'd rather wait for that period to end rather than adding into it now, right? Let's just say this were to dip a little bit, and then that window closes. We have new supportive flows come in post the window of weakness. We have Vonna Charm return back. We start to see equity buyback occur, kind of front running that December, January OPEX. So we know that's kind of what I want to be a part of, guys. I don't want to be adding into these levels and that weakness. But we'll see where this ends up opening next week. Ideally, just one more week of just kind of waiting. But long story short, even off of this level with the current ads here, and to put it in perspective, this dip here with these lower wicks on the daily, I was only down I think it was the max was 14 to 12%. I was somewhere in that range. With this current close, I'm up 3.68%. And we talked about this a lot. If this can reach target up here, right around to 342.52, this trade is going to go well above 3,000 per contract. So this will be a very worthwhile trade. It'll probably be 15 to 18,000 on this. So I'll be very happy with that on virtually a very passive trade. So just a quick little update with that one. MU is probably the most concerning one, but I'm saving a lot of my cash to essentially size into this. You got to think, right? I mean, this little green box that I have down here is virtually the peg, right? So the power earnings gap that we had from back here on Wednesday, the 25th of September. Remember, it sold down, kind of caught legs here off of this big weekly spot back here, which was essentially the old high, right, that it broke out from. If I zoom this out, hopefully you guys can see that. And it ties really nicely into where the gap kind of caught, right? So it kind of sold down into the gap, the peg, if you will, bounced off that weekly slash monthly level, then popped out, lower high, kind of caught a higher low, lower high, and then we had, I would say, a small change of character, but it's now at a double bottom off of this peg. Normally I would add here, but I'm saving a lot of my cash for my invalidation, which would be down here, right? If you guys look as well, we have our low to our high. This is our discounted zone, these little blue lines here, tied into the 618 being right at the gap fill. So I'm going to save majority of my money, guys, if you guys can't tell, probably right around this 96.18, 95.84 spot, and my invalidation will be a close underneath that, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at. We'll see where we end up opening, for next week. What is this? Can you all see that? Why is it doing that? I have a blinking thing here. Weird. But yeah, that's probably where I'll save that. Who knows where we end up opening, or if this even ends up dipping next week. Like I said, it could be a nothing burger. But just a lot of my cash is going to be reserved for that. I did say I'm going to put probably about like 30K into this position. It'll be my biggest position in a while. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm waiting for. If you guys want to roll with that, that's totally fine. If you guys don't, I mean, this would be a good spot to close underneath if it breaks underneath 99.36. Just save a lot of the BP or buying power for like 96.18, right? And then invalidation underneath that, it would likely trade to 92, 90. I would just avoid it until then. So that's pretty much an update on that one. Just looking at it as well, though, on the weekly, this still looks like a very healthy chart. Why is it doing that? Can anyone else see that, dude? Or is it just me? That's super crazy. Is it just this chart? Oh, it's gone now. I don't know what that was. But this still looks like a healthy chart on the weekly. I would have liked to have seen it hold this like old lower high range here. We've talked about this quite a bit. Lower high, higher low. You guys kind of get the gist just in this general area. But still has healthy market structure. This reminds me a lot of, I mentioned this a lot, as TSM. Remember TSM? How we were adding, or at least I was adding off of this like little zone here. And remember it had in this, that same thing, window of weakness, that 2-week period, it sold down underneath the support and almost went to our invalidation spot. Then supportive flows kicked back in on like the second week of the new month. So like Tuesday, Monday, September 10th, we had this crazy hammer here, and then supportive flows, aka Ivana Charm, returned. We had this bounce back up, reclaim that structure, and we went on a crazy rip, right? I think the same thing can happen to MU. And that's really important to kind of understand. So I think we're kind of in this phase here where it looked a little scary, it felt uncomfortable, and I was too heavy too quickly. And I'm trying not to make the same mistake here, right? It's very, very simple. Like I said, we could just dive a little bit deeper into that spot there, and that's where I'm saving a lot of my money. But yeah, it still looks healthy on the weekly, so I'm not overthinking that at all. And then last but not least, I guess we can talk about Intel. This is like current position stuff, and I'll jump into IWM, don't worry. But this is one I think people wanted me to address. Didn't get the pop out I wanted. I was pretty upset. I talked about this. I was like, fingers crossed it ends up holding the 24.59. Of course, like all things, man, these don't always work out, but it sold off in the extended hours or the after hours. Had a little pop in pre-market, but didn't hold, and it sold down eventually all the way to 21.98. But still, guys, on the weekly, this chart looks super, super primed. I'm curious to see how this is, received, because if you guys didn't see, for the Dow, it was replaced by NVIDIA. But we do kind of have like a footprint candle here on the weekly chart, the daily chart, off of this SR flip, right? So I think it's a simple trade. It'll have till June of next year, so I'm not going to really overthink it. I still have the 25 contracts. I closed them actually green today. I didn't close. Let me clarify. I didn't close them. I closed green on them, right? So with today's candle, I think they closed at like 1.83. So I'm a little bit green on them. Overall, I've been up about 10% for the most part on these consistently. So it's nice to have them green again, but remember, I have no reason to close these. I want them to get above 24.59. That's a good sign, and then we want to look for this to trade to 29. So I think it's worth seeing this out. I'm not going to close these until either it invalidates under 21.98 or we get a breakout through 24.59 and then a move to 29 flat. And then last but not least, you guys ready for it? QQQ. We'll talk about this in SPY and IWM. But man, dude, it's always cool to see, other people say that you're crazy or call out for the breakouts. When we see distribution, it ends up playing out almost perfect. I mean, this thing didn't really ever get over 496, if we're being honest, guys. This little blue line here, remember this was that dark pool level. If you take a look at the weekly, no candle closed above. Easy distribution spot here. And I mean, it looks clean to come down. So I still have the 1107 contracts. I have no reason to really cut those. Saw some drawdown on them. Now I'm green on them. But we're basically looking for this inside bar to now break underneath this Thursday low, trade towards this dark pool print, or the signature print, if you will, at 481. Really comes down to this level down here, guys, 478. I've talked about this a lot. If this breaks down again, maybe hits 478, gives a lower high like that, or breaks under, maybe gaps down underneath and retests 478, I will size into a QQQ trade as well, right? This is such a big spot here with this daily series of equal lows and virtually thin air all the way down to our 471 spot, right? So, I mean, I'll be watching QQQ, but I'm not going to add it to my trade just yet. I'll probably start a roll in fresh contracts under 478. IWM, right? We've talked about this one. Kind of the same thing, right? It kind of had this shooting star candle off of, you can say this is a head and shoulders. It played out just like a head and shoulders, but it's sold underneath the higher low trend line with a pretty nasty candle here on Thursday, and really just looks like it retested that breakdown. We have an inside bar, and it closed obviously red, so nice little sign there, but this really confirms for me if it can break underneath this simple daily higher low, maybe retest that, and then starts to trade down into 212, right? This is going to be a pretty sick trade. I got some decent size on this one. I wanted to get to 10 grand. I haven't gotten to that point just yet. I'll probably do that if we break under 217.37 and retest it. I'll size into that trade. But pretty healthy move so far. This one looks good. Weekly, right? I mean, nothing really to talk about here. But SPY as well. If you guys, I might take an SPX trade next week if I'm being honest. I think if this breaks underneath this this bar's low on Thursday, pretty good opportunity, guys, for this to really melt down, in my opinion. I think this can very, very easily come down to like 561 to 560. We have to break through this level here. I don't know why I removed this, but let me put it back on. It's like 565. So, you know, just a small trade here on SPX. Under 568, I think we can get a 3-point flush down to like 565. And then through that, 561, right? So there could be an SPX trade on hand here underneath that 568. I want to bring that up. And if you guys haven't been able to tell, right, I mean, it's kind of perfectly hedged. I have longer dated stuff into January, June even, as well as December. And then I can go pretty aggressive against that 11.7 expiration and 11.15. Just getting exposure solely to the OPEX that's coming up here, the election that's coming up, as well as FOMC. So three kind of pronged volatility trio, right, that we have coming up. I can get exposure on my short side and just go short dated contracts with those. Get out of those, use my profits, and roll into the longer dated stuff on that dip, because the market will dip, right, if that ends up happening. So I think I have it pretty much perfectly planned out. And that's really all I wanted to cover, guys. I really didn't want to cover anything else. Really, it's just a waiting game. I said that. I don't want to add into this window with anything significant into my swings. Kind of just holding what I have and waiting until, you know, this week kind of passes over. But that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I just wanted to jump on here. You know, just say what's up. I'll be in chat as well this weekend if anyone wants to ask questions. But overall, activity's been pretty low, and I'm okay with that, and hopefully you guys are too. It'll pick back up probably end of next week. So don't overthink it. Nothing crazy. I'm not like depressed, or I'm not like upset at anything. I'm just chilling, guys. I've been up on these trades. I've also clearly been down, but it's not that big of a deal. Have some money just set aside. Like I said, don't blow your accounts. Stay alive. It's just one more week, right? And we'll be all right. So I'll see you guys next week. Really kind of comes down to election as well as FOMC, which is, I believe, Wednesday. Might as well just double check here. How about NFP though? It was a nothing burger too. Yeah, so Monday the election, right? Yeah, Monday the election, PMI on Tuesday, and then FOMC Thursday. So I mean, dude, that's a hell of a lineup. So just got to get through this week, guys. I'm telling you, just get through this week and we'll be all right. So I will see you guys next week.